Yeah. Very much so. Very much so. Okay. Guys, please have a little l'chaim. Okay. Guys, please have a little l'chaim, a little drink. I think we should be celebrating this being in person. It's a worthy celebration. Okay. L'chaim, l'chaim. Parsha Tetzave. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech shehakol v'yevit. Page 533. Page 533. The Parsha of this week is called Parsha Tetzave. And this is because of the opening verse, one of the most loaded verses in the Torah. Probably the most loaded verse in the Torah. Ve'ata tetzaveh et bnei Yisrael ve'yikhu eilecha shemen zayit zach. And you should command the children of Israel that they should bring to you shemen zayit zach, klil olive oil, katit lama'or, crushed for lighting or for the luminary. La'alot ner tamid, page 532. La'alot ner tamid, to ignite the lamp until it burns continuously. By the way, this is the only parsha in the Torah from the beginning of the book of Exodus where Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned, even once. Do you know about this fact? No. Now, why is Moshe Rabbeinu's name not mentioned in this parsha? So the Zohar, in the beginning of Parshas Pinchas, says the Zohar. You know what the Zohar is, yeah? It's the fundamental book of Kabbalah, the Zohar. The Zohar says that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in the parsha is because Moshe Rabbeinu, when he petitions for God to forgive for the Jewish people for the golden calf, he turns to God and he says, "Ve'im ayin, if you don't forgive them, macheni na misifrecha asher katavta, erase me from the book that you are writing." In other words, I am taking this very, very seriously. This that you are going to need to forgive the Jewish people, and because of that, the parsha in the Torah that his name is not written, even though it was for a good reason, for a good purpose. Parsha in the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not written is this parsha Tetzave. However, it's not that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is erased. It feels like Moshe Rabbeinu is actually getting an upgrade here. Usually, God is telling Moshe to tell the Jewish people. This parsha, God is telling Moshe, you are the commander. Shift. It's not that Moshe gets punished. It seems like Moshe becomes the commander. It's the first time in the Torah, and actually we have it 3 times in this week's parsha where there is the term ve'ata, and you bring close, and you should command, and you should. Moshe Rabbeinu becomes the commander. Usually we are used to the Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Hashem says to Moshe, tell. This parsha, God tells Moshe, you the commander. Suddenly, we're seemingly it's supposed to be that Moshe gets punished in this parsha based on this teaching. Moshe actually gets an upgrade. He becomes not the replacement of God, but he takes the space of God as the one who commands in behalf of God. The Ata Tetzave, and you should command the Jewish people. Okay? But there is multiple questions that are very, very difficult in this one verse in the Torah. Okay? Question number one. If you read the verse literally, it seems like Moshe is the one who is the recipient of the oil. And you should command the Jewish people that they should bring the oil to you. Yeah? Now, why should they bring the oil to Moshe? Moshe is not the one who lights the menorah. Aaron is the one who lights the menorah. Why do they have to bring the oil to Moshe? Okay, so some will say maybe Moshe's job, some commentary want to say that Moshe's job is to do the quality control, making sure the oil is perfect. I mean, why only by the oil? There is nothing else in the donations that brought to the tabernacle that it says that you have to bring it to Moshe for examination, for quality control. It's not Moshe's position. Something about the oil, and suddenly Moshe has to be the recipient of that pure olive oil. Another question that a lot of the commentaries are asking, it seems out of place. We're in the middle of talking about the construction of the tabernacle. We didn't even start building the tabernacle. We're just going through this parsha, the last week's parsha, the following parsha. We're only talking about the plans, construction plans. In the middle of this whole construction plan, suddenly Moshe gets a command to collect olive oil. Imagine yourself, you're looking at an empty area where there's a building being built. Yeah? You're standing with the contractors, with the architect. There's an empty area. And you're looking at your wife and you say, I'm looking at this empty space where we're going to build our future house, and I'm thinking about all the stuff we're going to need. What are we going to eat for dinner when we're going to get into the house? Are we going to have pasta and meatballs, or are we going to have, we didn't even start building it. We are still in the discussion of what needs to be done in construction. We're already talking about the quality of oil that we're going to bring, and we have to bring it now. What now? There's no house, there's no kitchen, nothing was built yet. It's like it's inserted suddenly in the middle of the discussion of all the stuff that's needed for the temple. Oh, don't forget to ask them for the oil. It's another question that's being asked. Now, the question that we actually already answered in the beginning is, where is the natural opening? Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Israel veyaviu elecha shemen zayit zach. That would be the regular opening. God says to Moshe, tell the Jewish people, let them bring oil. Why, when it comes to the oil, suddenly Moshe becomes the commander? I want you to command them. There is something about the oil that we need Moshe to be the commander. Nothing else in the Torah, God says to Moshe, I want you to be the commander. I am the commander. You are the one who delivers the message in my name. The only place in the Torah where Moshe suddenly has to take the God's space kind of, and God says, you know what? Here I am not the one commanding. I want you to be the commander. I want you to invite the people to bring the olive oil, the pure olive oil to the temple. Why when it comes to the oil, suddenly God says, Moshe, that's your job. You are the collector of the olive oil. All the spices, all the other stuff, God is the commander. Wearing tefillin, God is the commander. Tzitzis, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Israel v'amarta alehem v'asu lahem tzitzit. No one thinks that God is the commander. That Moshe is the commander. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Israel. Just talk to them and tell them that I'm commanding them to wear tzitzis. So it comes to the oil, this place. We already explained that this week's Parsha, Moshe's name is missing. But it's interesting why precisely when it comes to the oil, collecting of pure olive oil, Moshe suddenly is instructed by God. There is something about oil. It is so, something about this where God has to say to Moshe, it's not me, it's you. I want to touch on that today.
Well, oil is used for, I guess, food.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
the wheels, parts.
The what? I mean, again, we spoke last week about the menorah. This is why I like to speak about the oil today, because we started a pattern of something that created a whole awareness. Now, by the way, this pasuk, this verse, Elshich, we mentioned Reb Moshe Elshich last week, 15 questions just on this verse. He asks 15 questions on this verse, just in this opening verse. Da Barbanel asks 10 questions on this opening verse. Everybody, every commentary that you open up from the classic commentaries, this verse is a very mind-boggling, mysterious. What's going on here?
Well, isn't olive oil also an oil? Like olive oil was used to show the Nevi'im and the
Olive oil is
ritual.
Yeah, but here he's talking about the olive oil for the menorah.
Oh.
And he says, to la'alot ner tamid, yeah, in order to la'alot ner tamid, to light a everlasting candle. Yeah. Now, those of you who know about the menorah, and you could see in the next verse, the oil moed, where's the menorah lit? In the tent of meeting, bichutz laparochet, outside of the curtain that divides, asher alaydu, that divides between the holy of holiest and the temple. Yarochoto, who is the one who has to prepare the menorah? Aharon uvanav, not Moshe. The one who has to deal with the oil and prepare it and light it, Aaron and his children. Mi'erev ad boker. The menorah was lit only from evening till morning. But when God talks to Moshe, what does God say? When do we going to have that candle? Ner tamid. Verse number 1, the first verse, verse 20, the opening verse of the Parsha. What does Hashem say? Lahalot ner tamid. It should be an everlasting candle. The next verse, he contradicts himself. He says that candle will burning from night until day. So one second, was the menorah lit always? Or was the menorah lit from night to day? So this is again, I'm just touching on these questions because I'm trying to open up here a channel to a whole understanding about the entire role of who Moshe is in the relationship to the Jewish people, and in where was he positioned as a result of being the advocate for the Jewish people after the sin of the golden calf. There's something that happened as a result of the golden calf that his name is not mentioned in the Parsha. He's erased. There's no Moshe's name. Moshe's name is erased. Simming is punished for saying to God, erase my name. God said, you know what? When a tzaddik says something, it has to happen. Your name is going to be erased, not from the entire Torah, but from one Parsha. How interesting it is, and this I want you to be aware of that. This is really amazing. Some of the commentaries say, interesting, when do we read Parshat Tetzave? In a leap year, in a regular year? When do we read Parshat Tetzave? When? On the calendar, when do we read it? It's true, always around Valentine's Day, February. But that's not what the Torah is talking about. Valentine's Day did not exist. Some of the Torah, every day was Valentine's Day. This only started when people have no patience for each other, so they created one day to just do their Valentine's Day. Hey, Devorah. Good to see you. When do we read it? On the Jewish calendar. But when in Adar? always on the week of Zayin Adar. Zayin Adar, Talmud says, is the day that Moshe passed away. That was the day that Moshe was born, and that was the day that Moshe passed away. And this is why in a year that we have two Adars, Zayin Adar Aleph, so the Yortzeit of Moshe is celebrated on the first Adar. The Gemara says that when Haman had to sit down and to plan out which month should he use, the name Purim is the raffle, and he was concerned what would be the best month to go and kill all the Jewish people. So he was thinking, what's the best month? He didn't know. Every month is a holiday or a miracle. And he made a raffle and came out the month of Adar, and he said he was very happy. Samach, simcha gdola belibo. He was very happy. Why was he happy? Because he knew that was the month that's bad luck for the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu died. There was 30 days of mourning that happened in the desert from the 7th of Adar. Most of the month, the Jewish people were mourning. He knew that's a mourning month for the Jewish people. Now, what he didn't know, and what doesn't say in the Torah, it doesn't say when Moshe was born. And he didn't realize. Now, why doesn't it say when Moshe was born? Because his mother, Moshe's mother, had to hide the baby, because at that time Pharaoh would execute all the babies. So no one knew when Moshe was born, and Haman for sure didn't know when Moshe was born, but Moshe was born on the day he passed away. As Moshe Rabbeinu himself says, the Talmud says, what does Moshe Rabbeinu says? Today I turned 120. The day of his passing, he says, today I turned 120. And from this we know that Moshe Rabbeinu died on the day of his birthday. And from this we learn that God Almighty feels the days of the tzaddik from day to day. That the tzaddik dies on the day of his birthday because he lived a full life. Yeah, 120 full days. Now, Haman didn't know that. So he didn't realize that the day that he is decreeing, the month that he thinks is the most horrible month of the Jewish people, that's the month where the Redeemer of the Jewish people actually came into existence. That was the month of the birth of Moshe. But going back to what we were talking about, it's interesting that we are reading Parsha Tetzave always in the month, in the week of Moshe Rabbeinu's passing.
So this is the week?
This is the week, Zayin Adar. Today we are holding in the 9th of Adar. Tuesday was Zayin Adar, the week of Parsha Tetzave. Always in a leap year or even in a regular year, Parsha Tetzave is always the 7th of Adar.
Question.
Yes.
I don't know if this pertains to Moshe's birth and death day, but the age-old question is, what is greater, the day you're born or the greater you die? This any?
So here you're going to hear something. I don't want you to keep it beautiful.
Blow my mind?
I'm not going to blow your mind. I'm just going to teach you something that is very, very inspirational and uplifting, and a true understanding on a question that we all have. And I'm going to take it step by step. We have to be done today at 8:30, so let's keep on our mind that we're not going to go over time because I have to go pick up the children in the airport. So let's just, but bear with me. There is obviously what's going on in the world right now. There is zero leadership.
Zero what?
Leadership. Spiritual leaders. I'm talking about real, serious, inspirational spiritual leaders. Now, there's a vacuum. And it's going on for quite a while, by the way. You read the history, there was the Baal Shem Tov, there was the Gerah, there was leaders. Jewish history had phenomenal, powerful leaders who had not just a couple of people who just listened to their classes online or whatever. Talking about people who mastered in leadership. Obviously, what happened in the last 5 years is even those people who were miniature leaders, even them are wiped out. You look at leadership, spiritual leadership in the world, very, very poor. Not talking about this that we don't have prophets and we don't have great sources of inspiration. Everybody quotes teachings from the past. Yeah, anyone who is a great teacher can quote you a beautiful Elshich and a beautiful Baal Shem Tov and a beautiful Rabbi Schneerson and a beautiful. They quote you from the past, from the sources, from the sages. Where are the sages in the last 50 years? Where are the sages? Where is those people that you could say that is a spiritual leader? Now, this situation, again, this is a situation that some of us are aware of because we seek spiritual leadership in our lives. Some of us are not that aware of because they're not seekers and they're not looking for it, and life is good and okay as it is. The Talmud already talks about a lack of leadership. I'm talking about the days of the Talmud. Babylonian Talmud, the Talmud says, and this is a quote from the Tractate of Shabbat, the Talmud says, Ima rishonim kemalachim. Those who were early on were like as special and majestic as angels. Anu kebnei Adam. We are like humans. But if the first one were like humans, we are like animals. And I'm not talking about an animal, Gemara says, ruling out a specific animal, an animal of a Pinchas ben Yair. There was a Talmudic sage, his name was Pinchas ben Yair, that his animal did not eat from food that it wasn't taken off the tithing. They didn't take off 10% of the produce and given away. He wouldn't touch that food. He wouldn't eat food that was stolen. He had Pinchas ben Yair was such a tzaddik that he influenced the animals of his life. The animals in his barn were influenced not to eat stuff that is not kosher. That's how special he is. He says, if they were like humans, we are like animals, but not like the animals of Pinchas ben Yair. So this is talking about in the days of the Talmud. Now, fast forward, Talmud, years later, I'm talking about 1,500 years after the Talmud. We are right now in. What's happening? What is going on? What's the God's plan here? And what I want to teach you today is one of the greatest teachings, and actually the final teaching that we received from our Rebbe. Rabbi Schneerson, the last teachings that he brought out and he handed out was a discourse on the words, the Ata Tetzave is Bnei Yisrael. 1992, the Rebbe suffered a stroke on the 27th of Adar, 20 days after the 7th of Adar. And on Purim Katan, that was the 14th of Adar, the Rebbe asked to publish a discourse that he said in 1941. And the Rebbe intensively went through word by word, and he edited, and he cut and pasted, and he stood for hours and hours and hours that night, handing over the booklet with his teaching to every person, men, women, children, received that discourse. And it was his will. That was the last thing that he handed into the hands of his Hasidim before that day when he got his stroke, until he passed in the year 1994. And in that discourse, there was a secret. That if humanity will know the secret, not only the pain of exile will be tolerated, we will understand exactly what's happening right now in our life. Now, I want to give you a little bit of a background, and I'm going to teach you the basic gist of that discourse. And then we'll answer all the questions that we brought at the beginning of the class. Don't close the book yet. You're going to need the book. 1927. Communist Russia. The Rebbe's father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, was forced to move to Leningrad. He had to live within the city of Leningrad because this is 10 years after the revolution. The Russian government wanted to have a close eye on this rabbi, knowing that he is personally in charge on the revolution of the rebellion of the Orthodox Jews against the Russian plan of removing God, removing spirituality, communism. They knew that he is running an underground organization, building and opening underground schools against the public school system, excavating mikvahs in basement and cellars of people's houses, opening up silent yeshivas in different places. And he's running a whole operation, all done hush, under the radar. Just now, this past few weeks, there is a rabbi in Russian. His name is Baruch Gorin. Some Russians know him because he translated a lot of the books into Russian from Hebrew. He went on a campaign to translate, now that it's open and it's released, the investigation from the NKVD, that was called at that time, the GPO, the NKVD, whatever their name was, it kept on changing, where they were prosecuting those underground messengers. Hundreds and hundreds of yeshiva students were murdered because they opened up yeshivas, because they opened up schools, because they taught in schools. Talking about hundreds. And every day he releases on his Facebook page 5, 6 names. And he says there is close to 1,000 names that he has to go through still. Every person is a young 30-year-old, 20-year-old, who is being sent to open up an underground school and teach Jewish children Aleph Bet. And the Frierdiker Rebbe sent those boys, knowing that most of them are not going to come back. But that is the mission of that time. In order to keep Judaism in the former Soviet Union alive and well. And what we see now, what do we see now? Is like that springing out of the embers was this huge revival of Judaism in the former Soviet Union. It was all those underground schools, yeshivas, students who study Torah, connected to Judaism. That was the mission of that time. They knew that Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, father-in-law of the late Rebbe, he is the one who runs this whole operation. Now, they had no evidence for that. Anyone who was arrested didn't say a word. And they wanted to have clear evidence that this guy is what it's called in that time, contre-revolutionnaire. I think that's the word in Russian, if I'm pronouncing it correct. He's a revolutionary. Purim Katan, 1927. Actually, in the beginning of 1927, Simchas Torah, the previous Rebbe already establishes that we should say the Tehillim of the day. In Chabad, every day, the Tehillim is divided into the days of the month, to the days of the week. 1927, Simchas Torah, the previous Rebbe says there is dark clouds coming. And in order to somehow ease off the judgment or whatever is coming our way, we should begin saying every day a couple of chapters of Tehillim. And he starts this institution of reciting the Tehillim every day. Purim Katan, 1927, the previous Rebbe was invited to Moscow for a meeting of rabbis. And in the great synagogue of Moscow, the previous Rebbe was asked to give a talk in front of Moscow Jews. He came from Leningrad by train to Moscow, and hundreds of people came to hear this great rabbi. He was told before that there is in the crowd, there is spies from the KPO and KBD, whatever they were called. And every word he's going to say is going to be recorded and given over to the authorities. So be careful. Now, the Frierdiker Rebbe got up and he began a discourse from a word in the Megillah. Megillah says, that Purim was the day when the Jewish people took upon themselves to do what God commanded them. And the Talmud says that in the days of Haman is when Jews actually accepted the Torah. You think they accepted the Torah when the Torah was given at Mount Sinai? Talmud says Torah was given at Mount Sinai. They were flabbergasted. God Almighty just took them out of Egypt, just threw on them gold, just gave them gifts, just held them so high. Obviously, they were willing to accept. But you know when the test was? When did they actually accept the Torah? When Haman showed up and he says, I'm going to murder every single Jew, men, women, and children. All of them. He didn't say because they are religious. He didn't say because they're he just said, I'm murdering anybody who calls himself Jewish. And that time, when the decree of Haman came, Jews decided on their own to cleave and stick to their Judaism, even when there is no temple, even if there is no God apparent, even when they are in exile. They stood and they fought their way through to stick with it. They could have said, we're not Jewish anymore. You could have said that, and Haman would have left them alone. But he stood up and they yelled out, because Mordechai inspired them, that they are supposed to be standing tall against Haman, not to bow down to him and not to prostrate in front of them. Mordechai inspired the Jewish people to remain loyal to their Judaism. And this is what the Talmud says. This is when the Jews took upon the Torah upon themselves. It wasn't imposed on them with all this inspiration and all the gold and silver. It was their own will. Obviously, Mordechai was there to inspire them. Esther was there to create a 3-day fast. But the Jews stood in a readiness to be killed, but to remain Jewish. They were ready to be killed, but not to leave them, abandon their title as Jews, keeping the Torah, keeping the mitzvahs. And as the Talmud says, Mordechai was teaching little children when Haman showed up to take Mordechai and to take him on the horse. And he came in. And what was Mordechai teaching the children at that time? You think he was teaching them words of inspiration? Talmud says he was teaching them the laws, how a Kohen has to conduct himself while he's putting flour offering on the altar. Now, there's no temple, there's no Kohen, they're living in Persia, but this is what he was teaching them. They were learning Torah, not Torah that is needed for their day-to-day life. The Haman walked in and he heard them learning about this. Mordechai is explaining them how the Kohen has to grab the flour with his 3 fingers and walk with it to the altar. Mordechai was teaching them the laws of a temple that doesn't even exist at that time. Maybe it will exist in the future. First temple was destroyed. Second temple wasn't built yet. In Persia, in exile, what is he learning with them? About a little handful of flour. And Haman said, that handful of flour is worth it more than all the gold and silver that I gave the king to kill those Jews. Because that handful of flour that they are learning right now is going to save them, and all my gold and silver will bring to my annihilation. But this is what Mordechai was doing, taking little children in the time of exile. And what was he doing with them? Learning with them about the laws of a Kohen in the Beis Hamikdash. Frierdiker Rebbe spoke this in front of hundreds of Jews in Moscow. And he said these words. He said, the government in Russia does not let you teach Torah to your children. This is the time when we need to go and act like the children in the times of Mordechai. Gather the Jews, take 10 children into your basement and learn with them. He was going, and he was going, and he was talking with, and everybody knew that there's going to be a price to pay. 3 months later, the 20th of Sivan, they came to his house, they arrested him, they imprisoned him, and he was sentenced to the worst sentence at that time, to be killed. Thank God, in a miraculous way, and a half of it. Not only he wasn't killed, he was given permission. And he was told that he has to leave Russia. This is when he moved from Russia to Latvia, then from Latvia to Warsaw, and then from Warsaw he came to America. And he lived in America for 10 years till 1940. But this is the story. So when the Rebbe gives his last discourse, 1992, let's fast forward 1992. The Rebbe is teaching us about Moshe Rabbeinu collecting the oil for the menorah. Says the Rebbe, where is Moshe? I don't see Moshe's name. And what do we learn in the Zohar? Moshe's name is erased. So who is God talking to? And you should come in. Who is you? Every Jew looks at us and says, you should come in. God is talking to who? So who is God talking to? Each and every one of us. It says the Zohar, Ispashtusa de Moshe b'chol dara v'dara. Every generation and every Jew carries a Moshe in his heart. There is a time when we have a Moshe. And Moshe is there. And his name is there, and everybody knows who is the leader, and everybody knows who is the teacher, And everybody knows who is the source of inspiration. You could name him and look at him. And Moshe is the one who is being the one who Tetzave. What does Tetzave means? What does a mitzvah mean? Some people think a mitzvah just means a commandment. What does a mitzvah mean? Connection, tzavta. Ve'ata, tetzaveh, you, Moshe, have to connect the Jewish people, the Bnei Israel. How do you collect it? How do you connect to the Jewish people? And here comes the secret. Olive oil. What is olive oil? Oh, the olive oil is used for the menorah, but what is olive oil? Olive oil could come to existence only when the olive is crushed. You take the olive, you crush it, you destroy it, and it gives out its oil. Pure oil. God is telling Moshe, you know how you are connected to the Jewish people? Your connection to the Jewish people is to bring out the oil that's in them. When is Moshe there to bring out the oil within the Jewish people? When a Jew is in exile. When a Jew is crushed. And in the time of exile, in the time of darkness, in the times of concealment, what does Moshe do? He inspires. He gives us the drive to keep on being who we are, even when it's so difficult and so breaking and so excruciating. This is how the menorah burns. Tamid, always. Always. It's not just a temporary menorah. A menorah that burns always comes from the struggle of the Jew. He struggles and he's in pain and he's not in the mood, and he still is willing to walk proud and say, I am a Jew. I do mitzvahs. The crushing of the olive gives the ability to have a source of light. The menorah, as beautiful as it is, and as perfect as it is, will not be lit in unless we have the broken hearts of the Jew, who does the mitzvahs and identifies himself as a Jew in the time of exile, in the time of struggle, in the time of suffering. How much more so? How much more so? When we look at the verse and we say Moshe's name is not written, and we feel that God is talking to us, and suddenly, not just Moshe takes God's space as a commander, because God is concealed and God is hidden. The Rebbe says further, and this is what the Rebbe says in 1992, that it comes a time when Moshe is concealed. There is no Moshe. There is no Moshe's name. Bikashti et asher ahava nafshi. I'm looking for my source of love. I'm looking for my inspiration. I'm looking for a Rebbe. I'm looking for a Moshe. I'm looking for someone to say something. The world is turning over upside down. Ukraine, Russia, Corona. The world is shifting and turning. Who can say something to lift us up? Somebody. And this is the moment. This is the moment we are right now. Every single one of us has to tap in to the Moshe right here. Everybody got an upgrade. It's painful. It's hurtful. It's much easier when we have someone telling us what to do and inspiring us. But then comes a day when God comes and says, guys, it's time to grow up. There's not going to be thunders and lightnings and manna falling from the sky. There's going to be a Haman on top of your head. But you know what? I sent you a Mordechai. Amazing. We have a Mordechai. Mordechai is lifting us up. He's teaching us the Parsha he's taking the children and he's making a revolution. Then comes the time when there is no Mordechai. There is no Mordechai, there is no Yosef Yitzchak, there is no Menachem Mendel. There's a bunch of Jews sitting together with a little bit of l'chaim and trying to work it out. That's the crushing. The crushing of exile is not because we are suffering. Nobody's suffering. The interesting thing is, it's nothing stands in your way from being openly Jewish right now. Nothing. You could walk with a yarmulke and payas hanging down on both of your sides, and tzitzis hanging, tchelas from all sides, putting on tefillin in Manhattan on the street and downtown Issaquah and downtown Seattle, menorahs everywhere. There is nothing in your way today to demonstrate your Judaism. Nothing. We don't have any persecution. By the way, the opposite. You only get respect for walking around with a yarmulke on your head. Or they look at you as another weirdo from Seattle who wears a beanie on his head. That's all. But there is no prosecution. The only one who says that it was prosecution is the ADL, because that's how they have to make money. So they have to create prosecution, so we continue being in fear, and that's how they have to fundraise. And I understand them. Everybody has to do something to make a living. There is no prosecution right now in the normal world that we live in to be openly Jewish. Everybody who wants to have a car can buy a car. So we don't have physical poverty. We don't have spiritual poverty. We have every book available online for free, every audio class, every Kabbalah class. You don't need my Torahs. You don't need Beri Farkash to teach you. I have so many Jews that I have turned away from learning with me because I showed them what is available online. And when they once saw what is available online, they said, I'm wasting my time with this guy in Issaquah. I have to learn from the best guy from New York. There is so much stuff available. No one can say today that he's lacking. I mean, some people, unfortunately, always there's people who suffer and struggle. But look at the world. We are living at times where never in human history, if you would put a person in a time machine 100 years ago and give him to see what's going on right now in the world. He sits in a shtetl and he waits for the milkman to deliver the sour milk. And if he has to send his kids to school, he doesn't have a school to send. He has to hire a malamet to come in the village to learn with his kids. Put him in a time machine and let him see, take him into the time machine and see 100 years ahead. Yerushalayim, New York, Moscow, the food. You remember the groceries 100 years ago? Those of you who remembers the groceries 100 years ago, they look, nobody remembers. But you look at what you think, what was available 100 years ago in a grocery. And you go into now, you go into Fred Meyer right now. You go into a grocery. There is nothing that's standing in your way physically. There is no Stalin. There is no Haman. Yeah? So what is left? What's the problem right now? What is the problem right now to achieve greatness, to be majestic? What is missing?
Self-energy.
Us, ourselves, to get out of our own exile. That's all what is necessary. For a person to remove barriers, blocks, self-limiting beliefs, and just show up in your Judaism in full color, in full excitement. Nothing stands in your way. But this is the ultimate challenge. The ultimate challenge is, I need to become the Rebbe. But I don't want to become a Rebbe. I want to be little. It felt so good to be under the table. I want to remain under the table. You know, when they invented the train, there was a huge crisis for the farmers. Everybody is used to horses and wagons. And suddenly there is a train. Everybody's out of business. So they were very, very upset, very, very disturbed. They were actually trying to figure out how this works. How could they sabotage it? A group of farmers got together. The famous story, I don't know if I told you once. They got together into the train station to investigate the train. How does it work? And they looked. They was trying to find, where are the horses? There is horses somewhere. On the side, there has to be horses. Now, by the way, till today, they're using horses. 100 horsepower, 200 horsepower. They didn't leave, by the way, we didn't leave the horses yet. But in those days, when the train came out, the farmers firmly believed that there is horses hiding somewhere. It can't be that anything is moving, carries people and luggage without horses. It was one belief that they had to get rid of. So the story goes that they decided to send a farmer, made a raffle, and they send a farmer to go investigate the secret of the train. They went, they collected a little bit of money. Every wagon driver gave out a little bit of his shekels. And together they went and they bought a first class ticket, the most expensive ticket. One guy will go on a train ride. He will go through every hole, every crevice. He will come back with the real information. How does this happen? No. Yankel, the farmer, won the ticket. Puts on his beautiful clothes. He's going to travel with the train. Go to the big city. Getting ready for the train to come. Now, he has no idea what to do on the train. He was never in his life on the train. How do you behave on a train? So, he sees a group of guys, and they look young. They know how to use trains. You know, they're from the Generation X. They know how to use trains. They are from the millennials. He says, whatever they do, I'll do. So he sits and he waits. And the train pulls up, and all the smoke is going. And Yankel watches the kids. The kids jump up. He jumps up. He doesn't know. He said, whatever they do, I do. The door closes down. Everyone sits down, and suddenly there's a bell ringing. That means the conductor is coming to check the tickets from everybody. Those boys run under the benches. Yankel doesn't know. He sees everybody run under the benches. He runs under the benches too. Now, he doesn't know why they're running under the benches. So by him, obviously, his legs are sticking out. His hand is sticking out. Conductor passes by, yanks him out, smacks him up, beats him up, yells at him, aren't you ashamed of yourself? You thief, what are you doing here? Throwing you off the train. Yankel is crying. He doesn't know what he wants. He says, I'm doing, they were going under the bench. I'm going under the bench. I don't know what I did. So do you have a ticket? Yankel says, sure, I have a ticket. Bought it for a lot of money. And he puts his hands in his pocket, shaking, shivering. He takes out, and the guy looks at this. You have a first class ticket and you're laying under the bench? This machine. You have a first class ticket and you're sitting under the bench? Guys, we have a first class ticket. And we're going to live like everybody else. Everybody goes under the bench. I'm going under the bench. Everybody puts on this hat. I want to put on that hat. Everybody talks. I want to talk this way. So if there is a Moshe who shakes you up and gets up in Moscow in the synagogue and says, guys, kill or get killed, take your children, learn Torah with them. So you have a Moshe who inspires you. But then you look at the crushing olive, who is crushing under the exile attitude. It's an attitude. It's not an exile reality. You're not in an exile reality. You're living Mashiach's times. Where in history did a Jew have so many resources for Torah study? Where in history did a Jew have a Chabad house in every town, in every city, in every place? Someone who is ready to welcome you and learn with you. Where in history did Jews have so much kosher supplies? Where in history do we have so much safety? The Goyim don't care about us. We're not anybody's interest besides a couple of Meshugoyim in the UN and a couple of political leaders who have nothing better to do with their time. When is the last time your next door neighbor cared if you're Jewish or not? They really couldn't care less. You have these days a golden ticket and you hide under the bench because everybody else does it. I want to go claim my greatness. Now the story is a continuation. I don't want to get into the whole continuation. The issue was he comes back and he's all shooken up from the trip and his friends ask him, "No, did you find the horses? Did you find them?" He says, "I'll tell you, I discovered exactly how it works." So they invite all the wise men from the town. They pass around the schnapps. The uncle is going to tell them how it works. He says, "Listen, I was sitting on the train. I was trying to figure it out. I was in first class eventually. And I was thinking to myself, how does first class move? I looked to the right. I looked to the left. I looked under. Then I realized second class cart pushes first class cart. And that's how first class cars is moving, because second class pushes first class. So one guy says, 1 second. How does second class move? He says, I'll tell you. After second class, there was a couple of carts of third class, a whole bunch of them. And they all push second class. They push us first class, and that's how we move. Ah, brilliant. So one wise guy says, hold on 1 second. So how does the last class move? He says, science didn't discover that
Yeah.
yet. This created this created that, this created that. How was the first one created? Listen, years of science, we still didn't reach to the source. By the way, this whole story is just a metaphor. It never happened. Now, the end of the story, what was the end of the story? The farmers realized how beneficial the train is. Those towns who were lucky that the train passed by their village got business. It became a very hot market to live in a town next to the train. It means you get deliveries, you become so all the farmers were really grateful after a couple of months of knowing what the train did to the village and how the real estate price went up and the markets were coming to their town. They decided to all go and bring an offering of gratitude to the Tsar. Did I tell you the story? You never heard the story from me? It's one of my most classic Hasidic tales that I made up. So they decided to all go to the Tsar to give him gratitude for making this beautiful train that stops in their town. Because he could be able to choose, the trucks were going through Russia, Ukraine, they could have gone anywhere. Anyways, they loaded up a wagon filled with gifts and goodies, and they started traveling towards St. Petersburg to go meet the Tsar. And they show up, and they ask for a private audience with the Tsar. And they ask, we don't want to ask for anything. Everybody's asking from Stockholm the Tsar. We are just here for a meeting of gratitude. The Tsar was so taken. I mean, the Tsar had a human heart somewhere. Some of the Tsars are the human heart. Maybe in the story, the Tsar is a human heart. And he's so touched by this that his farmers are coming to sing it. He gave them the time. And they all showed up, all the farmers with Yankel in front of him. And they were carrying full with baskets with fruits and chickens and eggs and all the goodies that they made in their farm. And then bringing it to the Tsar. They say, we want to thank you for making the train pass by next to our town. Our economy improved, our life improved. We're so grateful. The Tsar says, can I ask you one question? How did you get here? The horse and buggy. The Tsar was very, very insulted. I gave you a train that you can go on the train and be in St. Petersburg in no time. And what are you doing? You're holding on to your old beliefs and your old stuff. You're still going to schlep with a horse and buggy. And you have a train ready from your town till St. Petersburg. Isn't this the story of some of us? We are given the train. We are given first class. This is all a metaphor. It never happened. Maybe it happened. We are given all of that. And we still show up at the horse and buggy. We still are happy with the $18 gift that we gave. Because this is what my grandfather gave. When he was member 200 years ago, he gave $18 to the temple. So I'm still bringing him $18. The world has moved on from that $18. They're giving already 36. Learning Chumash and Aleph Beis in Hebrew school is important. It's foundation. But today, kids in Hebrew school are learning mystical ideas. We teach them mysticism. We teach them Kabbalah. We teach them the world has gotten an upgrade. No, I'm still driving my horse and buggy. And I'm full of gratitude that there is a website where you could download every class from Rabbi Jacobson and every class from Rabbi this one. So grateful. What are you doing? Oh, I'm on Netflix. I'm on YouTube. I'm watching Reels. Reels is the 10-second clips. That's what I'm watching. What are you so grateful for? Showing up at your farm. Moshe Rabbeinu says to a Yid that the anniversary of his passing comes his yahrzeit, and you look in the Torah and the Shabbos of Moshe Rabbeinu's yahrzeit, you know Moshe Rabbeinu is gone. There's no more Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu reminds you that Ato Tetzave Bnei Yisrael, you, the one who reads it. The same way I got an upgrade as a result of what I did for the Jewish people. It was not anymore God. I became the commander. In the absence of me, you, the one who reads it, you become the commander. You become the one who connects you yourself and every Jew around you with God Almighty. You are the one who brings that oil. Yes, that oil that comes from the challenges of life. You're making 10 minutes to learn here and 10 minutes to learn here, and it takes a toll on you because you don't have the time for it, you don't have the patience for it, and you don't feel it, and you don't see it, and no one is there to inspire you, and you're doing it anyways. You become the leader of yourself, you become the leader of your own life. And that candle shines, not just from night till day. The candle in the menorah in the temple was used during the night. During the day, it was unnecessary. It stopped. You didn't need it anymore. That candle that you light in yourself, when you allow that light to shine from within you, not because someone inspiring you, not because of the thunders and lightnings and the gold and silver that God is showering on you, go and you become the rebel. Then it's an everlasting candle. And this is what Mashiach's times we are entering right now is. All leadership is gone, finished. There is no source of inspiration in this world. There's nothing. There's a couple of people who will sit with you and learn and try to get inspiration from you and give you a little bit of inspiration. But there is no one. There's no Moshe. Don't convince yourself that there is someone hiding maybe in Tibet who has some words of inspiration. It's Avodah Zarah. Every person. What does he teach, by the way? He teaches us. I'm not allowed to bring him to a Torah class. But even the Tibet teachings is about a person having to find their own holiness within him. This is who the world is holding right now. So are you joining first class? Or are you going to hide under the bench? And then you're going to get slapped up by the conductor. All right, guys, this was wonderful.